threat. President Bolsonaro has made persistent attacks on the judiciary and the legal system that underpins Brazil's democracy. So far, the country's Supreme Court has demonstrated the power to resist him. But our last witness, Anthony Pereira, would caution against ruling anything out in the run-up to and aftermath of next year's election.
I think he's digging in now. I think he's kind of doubling down on that segment of the population that's still with him in spite of everything. A week's a long time in politics in any country, but it's especially a long time in Brazil, I think. So a lot can happen between now and then.
This inquiry was produced and presented by me, Tanya Beckett, and researched by Natasha Fernandez.
Distribution of BBC World Service in the U.S. is supported by C3AI. C3AI software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable problems. C3AI, this is enterprise AI. And Angie. Angie's List is now Angie, connecting homeowners with pros for projects. Homeowners can see upfront pricing on hundreds of projects and instantly book at Angie.com.
Hi, this is Steve Inskeep with NPR's Morning Edition, which reminds you of the power of one human voice. You turn on the radio some morning or your device and you're listening to Morning Edition and you hear one person telling a story from the other side of the world or from a neighborhood near you, and that voice brings you understanding of the news. Listen to Morning Edition every day, 5 to 9 on KNPR.
This is the BBC World Service. I'm Ed Butler. Today, the woes of Evergrande. China's second largest property company is struggling with $300 billion worth of debts. Could be going under, pulling down the entire Chinese property market with it. It's a very real risk, some reckon. So how scared should we all be? Business Daily in a couple of minutes.
BBC News with Moira Alderson. About 50 environment ministers are in Italy for key talks on climate change. The meeting in Milan is the last of its kind before a major UN summit in November. Earlier this week, the activist Greta Thunberg mocked politicians' attempts to tackle the problem. She's due to meet the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi later today. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has said he's willing to restore a communication hotline with South Korea, but he also rejected an offer of talks with the US. Mr. Kim accused Washington of maintaining a hostile policy towards Pyongyang. The president of Ecuador, Guillermo Lasso, has confirmed 116 inmates are now known to have died in Tuesday's prison riot. Guns, rifles and hand grenades were used during the fighting in the city of Guayaquil. Israel's foreign minister Yair Lapid is in Bahrain to open his country's new embassy. It's the first time an Israeli minister has visited the Gulf Kingdom since the two countries established diplomatic relations last year. Officials in Afghanistan say they've received a first shipment of humanitarian aid from China. Containers of supplies, including blankets and warm clothing, were flown into Kabul airport. There's growing concern about the plight of millions of Afghans as winter approaches. Amnesty International has accused Poland of pushing back migrants into Belarus in contravention of its international obligations. The rights group says it has evidence of violations. The Polish government said it had no knowledge of any such pushbacks. The singer Britney Spears has won a bitter legal battle to wrest control of her finances back from her father. A judge in Los Angeles has removed Jamie Spears from her conservatorship. He'd controlled his daughter's income since 2008 because of concerns about her mental health. BBC News.
Hello there, I'm Ed Butler. Welcome to Business Daily from the BBC. Today, the sound of scores of Chinese apartment blocks getting demolished. Or is that the crash of the whole real estate sector? Yes, China's second largest property developer is at risk of financial collapse, we understand, and Beijing is weighing the risk of spreading contagion.
Beijing is very concerned that this could lead to contagion across the property market. You know, a liquidity crunch where there are just no more loans, so that firms across all markets would not be able to pay for current obligations.
The Evergrande property bust coming up on Business Daily from the BBC. Protesters gathered earlier this month at Evergrande's company headquarters in the southern city of Shenzhen. Give us our money back, they chant, ignoring police demands to disperse.
If I can't get my money back, I'm going to jump off your building and die right here.
They owe me 37 million yuan, and they went to my hometown to warn my parents, to warn me not to make trouble. I reported them to the authorities.
We small business owners can't survive much longer. We need to pay the bank hundreds of thousands a month. We can't hold on much longer.
Small-scale protests like this have been springing up all across China in the last couple of weeks. There's reports that Evergrande, China's second largest property developer, is unable to meet its debts. Okay, so what, I hear you ask? A few disgruntled flat buyers have been shortchanged, maybe? Well, some fear this could be a lot bigger than that. The first signs of a property bubble that's been growing and preparing to burst in China for some 10 years now. George Magnus, an economist based at the University of Oxford, has been watching China's property obsession grow for the last 2 decades or more.
China's property boom really dates back to the 1990s, when China's State Council, which is effectively like the cabinet, transformed China's housing from a housing welfare system to what we now know everywhere as a proper housing market, with mortgages and lenders and prices. And it really began to gather momentum in the 2000s. Property ownership now is about 80%, so that means about sort of 4/5 of Chinese citizens have their own apartments or their own homes. And as a share of the economy, it's about a quarter of the economy. That includes all the industries that are related to it, like commodities and iron, steel, cement, copper.
Which is a huge proportion. I mean, compared to other economies, that's a big number.
It is a very big number, and I think that's why it has for a long time been the most important sector probably in the world economy. Certainly for countries that sell products and commodities into China directly into that market.
The economist George Magnus, well, that splurge in spending has led to some extraordinary outcomes. Stephen McDonnell is the BBC's China correspondent.
Real estate really took off here, not only as something to transform people from living in dirt poor poverty to a middle-class life, but also as a means of investment, because as people made more money, they didn't have a lot of other places to invest money in. And so you have had problems of people investing in apartment blocks, and they're all sold, for example, but with no prospect of getting tenants in there. In some cases, they don't even care, because they just want to park the money somewhere and hope that the value of the flat will go up and eventually they'll sell it again.
The way that has expressed itself, right, has been in these amazing developments. I mean, you've been round some of those over the years. Tell me about what they look like.
The classic case that I once saw was this ghost city in Inner Mongolia. Now, it was being fueled a lot by coal money, so people are making all this money out of sometimes illegal coal mines, and they had nowhere to park their money because they don't trust the stock market here. And yeah, you walk down the streets in that city, Changbai-shi, towers to the left of you, towers to the right, and virtually not a person walking down the middle of the street. And we did speak to real estate agents there at the time, by the way, and said, well, when are all these flats going to be sold? And they said, oh, they're all sold. We've sold a lot of them.
Wow.
It's just that there are just no tenants for them.
Just in the last few weeks, videos on Chinese websites have shown extraordinary demolitions of some vast developments. The biggest of all, this one in the city of Kunming. Spectators scream in awe as row upon row of 20-story tower blocks collapse amidst plumes of dust. The buildings have stood empty